Welcome to the World Flutist, where we can travel the whole world with the flute. This is our magic carpet ride. We can go to Ireland, we can go to France, we can go to Germany, we can go to Australia, we can go to Africa, we can go anywhere. Anywhere you go, there's flutes. So we can take this magic carpet ride anywhere. And I'm hoping that I can expand the destinations that you would consider when playing your flute. Finding your unique voice on the flute with the World Flutist program. I think it's pretty obvious that the world is a deeply connected space now. What's really cool is that I can be in the United States and I can be checking out ancient Indian music. People from India can be checking out American jazz. People from Australia can be checking out Brazilian music, and so on and so on. That's why I think it really makes sense to become a world music flutist, aware and being adaptable enough to play with almost any music, with any musician, anywhere in the world. I'm going to play an example now of a South Asian melody that I played in a rhythmic cycle of 7 beats. This is known as Rag Yaman. So I'm going to play a melody on the flute known as Yaman, and this is in a 7-beat cycle. So let's get the tabla going here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because I really feel that if you want to have a unique musical voice, you need to think out of the box. If you just do what everyone else is doing, there's nothing that makes you unique. I mean, you can think about people like George Harrison. George Harrison of the Beatles, he went to some world music elements that he brought into his music. And this influenced his music, and some of the music that the Beatles are most well known for happened after George Harrison brought some of these world music elements into the music of the Beatles. John Coltrane, one of the greatest saxophone players in jazz, he is best known for the music that he made after he incorporated some of the musical elements we're going to be talking about today. Paul Horn, a well-known flutist, and he was known for integrating world music with his Western jazz and conservatory training. In fact, one of his most famous albums is Paul Horn, Inside the Taj Mahal. In my own life, I've been able to integrate world music scales and rhythms with my own jazz and classical background. Here's a piece with my group called Infectuoso, Groovatissimo.
Yeah, go to recording.
Here's one of my students. She says, I was able to facilitate translating the Bansuri Indian flute approach to the Western flute. And here's one of my other students, Aish. She talks about her experience learning some of the world music methods that I teach.
Hi, my name is Aish. I have been taking flute lessons with John since 2021. I learned the Western flute when I was a kid, but I've always really loved Indian music. And so when I found out that John knew the Western flute and the Indian flute, I was really excited to learn from him. Since I've been taking lessons, I've learned so much about Indian music, and just being able to play Indian music on the Western flute has been a really exciting experience. I've learned so many different ragas. We've also learned some classical Western pieces as well as some jazz pieces. I feel like I've really expanded my knowledge of what the flute could be, and learned so much about so many different types of music. I've played things that I never even thought I would be able to play, and John has been just such an amazing teacher through all of it. He's so patient, he explains things really well, he's really motivational and makes you feel like you're progressing even if you feel like it's really difficult. So I'm very grateful to John and to have been able to take flute lessons with him for this long, and I definitely plan on continuing to do so. Thank you.
So what do all these people have in common? They're using some of the same musical elements we're going to be discussing here. We're going to cover how a simple musical shift, inspired by people like George Harrison and John Coltrane, can unlock a unique and unforgettable flute voice for you. Because it's not just even the music. The music helps to unlock a depth by enlivening a type of meditative effect that the music can have on your brain and nervous system. And how mastering specific melodic ways of practicing can demystify playing almost any music in the world today. Who is this for? This is for people that want to find their unique voice, that want to be something unique in their presentation. This is not for people that want to sound like everybody else. Where to find your unique voice? It's not by learning just the standard classical flute pieces or memorizing jazz solos. This music is great, but it's not going to make you that unique and differentiate yourself from other flute players. So if you're a flutist wanting to grow in world music, you have come to the right place. So some of the goals is I want to really show you some advanced world music concepts of melody and rhythm as applied to the flute. And there's a specific pathway to learn these elements that can add so much to your music. In fact, what I'm going to tell you today will enable you to improve whatever music you are playing, whether it's classical or jazz or folk or rock, because the world is changing, and now more than ever, people need to be a world musician in order to handle and work with almost any world music that's out there. So if you stay to the end, you're going to hear a lot of different steps and unique ways to implement this. And I'm going to also show you some unique software that speeds up the learning process of these advanced melodies and rhythm concepts by 75%. And you're going to show you essential elements of practicing that can increase your growth as a flutist. So, if you'll stay to the end of the webinar presentation today, I'm going to make available to anyone who stays to the end a 10-part series of over 5 hours of music, done mostly on a bamboo flute, playing world music themes. And this is over 5 hours of music. It comes with accompanying visual meditations along with this music. And this will give you a real good feeling of some different world music sounds that you may not have been exposed to. My name's John Wobbenhorst. Here I am in India with my flute. I was very happily been able to spend a lot of time there. Most recently, during the entire pandemic, I was in a town in South India called Tiruvannamalai. I've traveled the world with music. I've been to Fiji about 20 times, China, India, Europe, all over the world, all over universities, jazz clubs, house concerts, yoga centers, all over the world I've traveled with my music. I started flute in the 9th grade. I was about 13 years old. I immediately got into jazz, Miles, Coltrane, Chick Corea. Simultaneously, I was learning Western classical flute with a master student at Juilliard, Bach, Mozart, Debussy. I even ventured into the avant-garde, Stockhausen, John Cage. I was always drawn to learning about different approaches to music, and the music of India stood out as its vast resource of melodic development. They have what they call these ragas, which are melodic development. It's more than just a scale. It involves a unique scale, but within that scale, there's certain ways of going up and down the scale. There's certain key phrases for each raga, and these are vast resources of melodic development. And if you learn some of these melodic development ragas, you can have a unique voice in all of your flute playing, and also at very advanced rhythms that come from India as well. In fact, when I was in high school, I found my high school library had one record of Indian music. It was Ravi Shankar, live at the 1967 Pop Festival. At the same pop festival was the Mamas and the Papas, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, The Who, so many great rock things that we all grew up with. But Ravi Shankar was also playing there. And this concert, his playing, really blew my mind. I couldn't understand how anybody could do what he was doing. He was playing phrase after phrase of incredibly ecstatic music. He was obviously improvising, but somehow he went on and on and on with these ideas, the rhythmic, the melodies. It was just, I couldn't figure out what he was doing, but I was totally entranced by this music. But I struggled. I couldn't get how he was doing it. I was listening to this, trying to copy the licks. I got some effect from that, but I really wasn't making progress in understanding that music. I even went to one of my reference books, the book of Slonimsky's Treasures, a Thesaurus of Scales and Melodic Patterns. I looked at a lot of those trying to understand what was going on, what scales and patterns they were using. I also could not get comfortable with the various rhythms I saw these Indian musicians using. 7-beat cycles, 9-beat cycles, 48, 8.5, 5.25. And at first I tried to meet some Indian teachers. That even didn't work, because most of them could not clearly explain. They would say, oh, you do like that, you do this way, like that way. It was very vague, and I just thought, there's no way I can play this music. I can understand, I can listen to it, I can like it, but I cannot play this music. And I did not find someone for the flute who could teach me this, but I did start learning vocal music and tabla. But I really realized at some point, if I'm going to really be able to bring these concepts to the Western flute, I'm going to have to master to some degree the bamboo flute. So I began studies with the bansuri, which is the flute that's used in North India. And after going to India, I met a great flute maestro of the bansuri, Hari Prasad Chaurasia. Some people ask me, who's Hari Prasad Chaurasia? I just tell them, well, you know how Michael Jordan is to basketball? So Hari Prasad is like the king of the bamboo flute. And from him, I really started to learn these secrets of the Indian melodies and rhythms. In fact, after spending 2 years with him in India, I studied with him for 12 years at the Rotterdam Conservatorium in Holland, where he used to teach. And so through much struggle, I finally started to get some real proficiency on the bamboo flute. It took a lot, took a long time, and under the direction of a great maestro. And that's why Billboard magazine said, I'm one of the only Westerners who have mastered this instrument. So I finally learned the secrets of this Eastern melody and rhythm, and I realized I'd been taking the hard road. There's a much easier way. There are actually essential elements. In other words, the essence of these melodic ragas. There's essence of it. And if you learn these and practice a certain way, you can learn them much faster than what I went through. Because many people feel this music is way too complicated. But if you learn some essential rules, it becomes easy. So some of the essential elements I learned is that each raga, each melodic structure, has an ascending and descending scale. There's a melodic outline, in other words, key phrases that you play. There's a rhythmic cycle, 16 beats, 12 beats, 6 beats. There's compositions you can learn and improvisations. And if you take this approach, what seemed like impossible music to learn starts to make sense and starts to become integrated into your flute playing. So there's a way through this maze There's a way through this complicated maze, and if you take the right way, you can get deep into this music. If you take the wrong way, you can just be frustrated like I was. And so because of this, I became able to play with many, many different situations. Many Westerners wanted to play with me because I now had some additional elements to my flute playing. Howard Levy, Victor Wooten, Paul Horn, Jack DeJohnette, Larry Coryell, Paul McCandless, many different musicians, Indian musicians, Western musicians. I now was able to play with so many people, and these people wanted to play with me because of the extra special, unique things I had learned. So years of study and experience with many different Indian masters. Because one of the great world music cultures of the world is India. In fact, Indian music is very advanced in melody and rhythm, and once you learn this, it helps and rubs off on the rest of your music. But it's more than just the music. This is the same music that comes from the same culture that brought us yoga and meditation. And what happens is, this music can trigger altered states of body and mind that allow you to be receptive to learning much more than you could learn otherwise. In fact, no matter what music you're learning some of this music will help you absorb whatever music you're doing to a much higher degree because it triggers meditative states. That's why a whole new area of music opened up for me. That's the relationship between music and yoga. I was hired as a music director for a yoga ashram in Fiji, where they ask my opinion on who to bring, what melodies to play that facilitate the spiritual process. And in fact, we all know today there's hundreds and hundreds of yoga centers everywhere, all over the country now. Many of them are involved in music, but not just any music that relates to yoga and meditation. So this is a whole other area of music. Of course, I still play universities, jazz clubs, house concerts, concert series, but also this whole yoga market is something that can open up to you when you learn something of this Eastern music. As George Harrison said, Indian music is brilliant, and for me it's got everything. It's an untouchable. You can't say what it is just because it just is. So George Harrison credits a lot of his originality to learning this Eastern music. And in fact, it's not just George Harrison, John Coltrane, Claude Debussy met some of the first Indian musicians to come to America. Alan Havana, a great composer who composed dozens and dozens of symphonies and hundreds of works that is played in orchestras all over the world. He was a Fulbright scholar in going to India in the 50s. And now this started to happen to me. I found that now my jazz recordings, where I'm playing a lot of Western flute, were totally changed from the background I had gotten from this Eastern music studies. All these recordings came out, and people started telling me that what I was telling them was changing their musicality on the Western flute. People asking me more and more how to play Indian music on the Western flute. Now, of course, you can learn Indian music on the traditional bansuri, that's the flute that's used in North India, but I found a lot of people felt, well, they've already spent 10, 20, 30 years learning the Western flute, and they'd like to learn those concepts on the Western flute. Now, of course, I do teach bansuri as well, so for some people, they want to learn the bansuri as well as learn these concepts for the Western flute. So I leave it up to each person what they'd like to do, if they'd like to learn just on the Western flute or on the Western flute and the bansuri. But there's a problem. How do you practice this music? What I had to do was hire a tabla player, someone to play a drone instrument in order to practice. But that's replaced now with some very special software. Again, how to convey these ragas? Well, if you learn the essential elements and melodic outlines as I described before, these ragas actually come very easily. In fact, I find the raga starts to play itself once you know the rules and regulations of each raga. And these rhythms, same again, if you have this software, iTabla Pro, you can practice rhythms of 7, 8.5, 5.25 beats. Because I've learned how to translate this bansuri to the Western flute. So imagine what it would be like if you have a much more unique voice with your music, where you can play in many different types of musical situations. I was brought to China, and I found I was able to take some of the raga scales that I learned, just change the ornamentation a little bit, and I fit right in with Chinese musicians. And again, this music will help you become more expressive in whatever you're playing. Whether if you're playing Western jazz or classical music, you'll find a greater sensitivity, a greater control of different rhythms. And this music is so spiritual. You'll find yourself sometimes I just feel overwhelming peace from this music. And we all know what a crazy world we're in right now. But this music really helps to just bring simple peace to your body and nervous system and mind. So again, a simple musical shift, just integrating some of these Eastern music principles like George Harrison, John Coltrane did, can unlock a unique voice for you. Because the old ways are not going to get you a unique voice. You want to be out of the box. Bach's flute sonatas are wonderful, but thousands of people have already played those. Memorizing every Coltrane solo is not going to make you sound necessarily any different. And remember, the Beatles, they were successful as a pop group, but they really became legendary once they incorporated this out-of-the-box world music Indian elements. So years of experience to translate this Indian music, I can make it much easier for someone. It took a long time for me to distill what is the essence of these ragas, what is the essence of these rhythms, how can you practice them, what specific exercises help you imbibe this most quickly, and how to unlock these new depth of meditation and activating untapped parts of your brain and nervous system. This allows you to learn at a much deeper and higher level. And these 5 essential elements of melody rhythm can demystify how to play almost any type of music. So I hope you can understand more deeply how this world flutist, world music ideas can deepen your flute playing. And especially using this iTabla Pro software gives you the drone element, and you can play along with over 30 different types of rhythms. So let me demonstrate now what it's like to see the Bansuri, and how I can play some ragas on the Western flute, and even show you some things with the iTabla Pro software. Hi, this is John, and I just want to take a moment to show you the Bansuri, because this is the instrument that I've learned, and I've learned how to translate to the Western flute. Now, this is a different instrument, of course. It's just made out of bamboo here. And you have to partially cover the holes to get some of the notes. But just to give you a quick sampling of it. So that's just a quick sampling of this beautiful sounding Bansuri. So here is a rendering of Rag Shiva Ranjani. Let's first put on the drone. It's very important whenever you're doing this Eastern Indian music, you have a drone on. I'm using this iTabla Pro app. This is a software that I have on my iPad. And in a moment I'll use the tabla drum sound that comes from this app also. So here's the scale. I'm using an alto flute. So now you can hear what a raga sounds like on a Western flute. that's just a quick sampling of Rag Shiva Ranjani done on the alto. This next example is going to be more rhythmically based, and I'm going to be playing a time cycle of 8.5 beats. So we can count that out. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. So first, let's start with the drone here, and I'm going to be playing a scale. I'm on the C flute now. So I'm playing G, A, B, C sharp, D, D flat, or 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, and flat 6, no 7th. So that's the scale I'm playing with this 8.5 beat cycle. First we'll put on the drone. I'm sorry, I had the wrong pitch. This is a G pitch, not an F pitch. So now we're in the key of G properly. Eight and a half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5. 1. Take some time to talk about this amazing software called iTabla Pro, because this is very essential for learning in a much speedier way, because of course you always need to have a drone in Indian music, and that's what you have here. And of course you can set the drone to any pitch. But the very cool thing is you then also have all of these rhythms. Team Tal, 16 beats. Let's turn off the drone for a second. All these different beats. Now, what's very important, the best way to learn some of these rhythms is to use what's called as the teka. In other words, this is the vocal percussion version of this 16-beat cycle. Da, din, din, da, da, din, din, da, da, tin, tin, ta, tete, din, din, da, da, din, din, da. So again, this is a shortcut to learning these rhythms. If you learn these basic tabla sounds and you can vocalize these, this makes learning the rhythms much faster and much easier. Let's take another one here. One of my favorite ones is this one in 9, Matatal. Din, tidikita, din, na, tu, na, didi, na, din, tidikita, din, na, tu, na, didi, na, din. So this is a very vital part of learning, both for the drone elements and for the rhythmic elements. I hope that was valuable for you and it gave you a better understanding of how you can incorporate really fantastic world music values into your music. I hope you feel more comfortable how to integrate this music. Different ways, specific ways to implement, using these melodic outlines, using this software, etc. And you can take what I've shared with you today and just keep on learning. I have confidence, even if all you did was leave this today and go on the internet, try to figure this out, try to find these ascending, descending scales and melodic patterns. And if that's your only option, it still hopefully would get you some greater knowledge of your instrument. But what if there's another option? What if there's an option that allowed me to serve you? In other words, I've spent years and dozens and actually over 4 decades learning this music, and I've really distilled it down to an essence. You can take this essence and learn this, integrate this into your musical life much more easier than what I had to go through. So if there is such an option for you to get more direct access, more direct instruction on these world music influences, if we could do, would you like to hear about that? So it's with great pleasure I introduce you to the World Flutist Program. Ta-da! Here's the fireworks. Because what I'm telling you today is really just the surface. We're just scratching the surface. It's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to tell you about these concepts. There's so much more to share. There's so many of these beautiful ragas to learn. But I'm just telling you the very tip of the iceberg today. So this really works for someone who wants a unique voice, not an echo. I mean, more proof of this is people like John McLaughlin, who grew up playing Mississippi blues, jazz, flamenco, and then he really went deep into Indian music. And this influenced his Mahavishnu Orchestra, other groups, Shakti. In fact, John said besides jazz, it's the only other school on the planet that develops improvisation to the high degree that you find in jazz. In fact, various rock groups have taken some of this knowledge. Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin, songs like Kashmir, or on the very first Led Zeppelin album, Black Mountainside, where he's playing with tabla. Aerosmith made a tune called Taste of India, where they integrated with one of India's top musicians. And I think George Harrison says it again. Through the grace of God, he was blessed by a desire to investigate classical music of India, the music and later the tradition of self-discipline of India, without which my life would be empty and pointless. He says it beautifully. So for limited time, I'm doing some sessions. It's about 45-minute sessions where I'll get together with you over the internet and we can share different knowledge, and I can show you some direct applications, how you could apply some of this directly, and just talk about your growth as a musician. On the call, we can see if we can help make your flute playing improve. What are the actual problems with your current flute playing? Are we a good fit to help you? Are you a good fit for us? Are you willing to practice and learn some out of the box practice methods? Then and only then we can show you what this World Flutist Program can do for you. So there's like 4 basic phases. The first is becoming familiar with melodic structures, these ascending scales, melodic outlines, how to grow in sargam. That's the Indian solfege. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa. And how to learn some basic rhythmic patterns. Once you know these patterns, you can go off and play on very unique ways, especially these rhythms of 9, 8.5, 12, 48. And then you'll find yourself being able to improvise within these structures. And soon, like what happened to me, I started composing with these new structures, and that really opened up a whole new territory for my music. So if this sounds like you want to develop your flute playing to reflect a wider range, over the next 5 days, I've set aside some time to talk. You can enter into my calendar a time, and we'll spend 45 minutes going over how we can help you develop a more unique sound with your flute playing. Because this can really be done in as little as 30 minutes a day of practice. Normally, many people have to practice 4, 5, 6 hours a day to get what I can show you in 30 minutes. That's because I've distilled down to the essence, the melodies and patterns of this music. So many Westerns have been deeply influenced. You can be next. So you can do one of 2 things. You can do this on your own and hopefully do it, or you can have me by your side to make sure that you're doing it right and blast through any roadblocks and accelerate your success faster than you could ever do on your own. This system is what's transformed my whole life, my whole musical life, and many others. And if all this did was allow you to play your current music with more depth, would that be worth it? If all this did was help you enter into meditative states, would that be worth it? If all this did was allow you to relate to other world musicians, people from China, Australia, Africa, would that be worth it? If all this did was allow you to present yourself as a world musician, capable of relating to any music on the planet, would that be worth it? So, here is the free gift of the Bansuri Meditations. Simply follow the instructions on the screen. Just send an email with the proper subject line, and we'll send you access to this Bansuri Meditations, over 5 hours of music. I want to invite you to truly become a world flutist, be able to musically travel anywhere. We use a group approach, and we have a 1-year certificate program with improvisations, performances, group learning, assigned learning. So this is an in-depth course, so we'd love to spend more time talking with you about it and see if it's right for you or not. So again, you can reserve a time. Look on the calendar right here. You can reserve a time on my calendar, and we can get together and talk about what this could be done for you.